size. Holy shit.
I'm not doing this.
Exactly. Is that someone's present? That's my present. Your present? No, I sold it on eBay. So I think that's
你去看到他，你是看到他谁？你看到他直接是是啊，伊布还是牛逼，我说。那个应该被吹了，今儿没月，我看那个对，没有，可能他们
I was told a bunch of people to take it.
Yeah,
I know.
这样男人有的不会在这还能热乎点。咱们坐个房车游行是吧？对。
Good morning then, and here today I'm going to cover business cases in this first session, and then after the break look at e-marketing. So both of these are quite important topics. Obviously the business case is what you have to produce for your assignment, and the design of the assessment is such that the three pieces initially all feed into the final report, which is your business case. So you're going to investigate the company, you're going to demonstrate your skills using an elevator pitch and nice rich PowerPoint, and then finally produce a business case for the board to consider formally. So what do I mean by a business case? Well, it's a justification for a proposed project on the basis of its expected commercial, financial and other benefits. And it's typically presented as a formal document, and the textbook by Keane has got an example in the appendix. That example is about 40 pages, so there's rather more there than you'll be able to get in yours. But nonetheless, let's have a look at the big example and think, okay, what are the good ideas here, which are the ideas you might leave out. And structure is also given in the Wikipedia article on business cases, and it's similar to the one that Keane has used. So sometimes people email and say, well, is there a template? The instructions and those examples show you what the structure should be, and then it's up to you to present that and format that in a way which is appropriate for the audience, which is the boardroom or board of the company. Of course, if you want, there are plenty of templates available on the web, and you can select one which is sensible. The audience is your funding body for a business case in general. In this case, it means the board of directors. In some cases, the company might have a project board that decides on whether the business case should go ahead or not. And they typically have a meeting and they consider a number of proposals at the same time. So your proposal is in competition with those others. And they will use a technique such as the decision matrix to rank them, prioritize them, discuss, and then decide which to fund. And what that means is you don't necessarily need to feel a failure if the board decide not to fund your proposal. It may be that the other proposals that came forward at the same time were just completely outstanding, and yours didn't make the cut, even though it was very good. For example, the research funding bodies, they have a certain amount of money, and then they will come up with their ranking, and they'll add up the money involved in each of these, and they'll say, okay, well, we've run out of money here. So number 6 won't get funded, no matter how good it is. Often, the amount of money doesn't quite cover the proposal. So they might get in contact with the author of that one they ranked number 5 and say, well, we'd like to fund your proposal, but you've asked for £2 million, we've only got £1.5 million, can you cut it down, and then we'll see if we can go about funding it. But number 6 isn't going to get a look in if there isn't enough money. That's the way that the research councils fund. It's slightly different maybe in a business. The business might well say, okay, we can dig a bit deeper and fund a few more projects if they really are outstanding and deliver significant return on investment that is reliable. Now, in the books, they have case studies, and sometimes people are a little bit naughty and they refer to those things as business cases as well. But I'm talking about the business case, meaning the proposal for funding and resource, not a description of something that happened in the past. Now, another factor is that the board may have a desire to fund a range of projects, for example, using the balanced scorecard and have some activities which improve the sort of company internals and its staff development. So they might fund, approve some project lower down the list because it happens to cover some other aspect, whereas these first few projects might all have been, improving the marketing, and so they don't want to fund a whole set of proposals, all of which are in the same area. They might have a secondary goal of covering a range of areas in their portfolio of projects. So again, if your proposal isn't funded, it might just be, it wasn't in the right area at the right time. There were too many other proposals in the same kind of area. So, here is some advice, and again this comes from the book by Keane, and the lecture is basically a summary of that book. Business books often like to have these 5 Ps and 7 Ps, so it's a little bit simplistic or gadget, but they've identified these important features of a business case. How do you make your business case better? Consider the quality of, well, how does it fit the scope and impact of the proposal? How does it fit with the business? How do you address the concerns of the business audience? And there's a recommendation that the team putting together the business case consider each individual member of the board and think about, okay, what's worrying the finance director at the moment? What's worrying the information officer at the moment? And even you can go a step further and say, well, we know that this particular person on the board is really keen on football. So can we bring in a little bit of a football analogy into our narrative or into the diagrams we use in our presentation. And I have heard people involved in sales and selling think very much in those terms. You know, how do we appeal emotionally to our audience? What are the things that they relate to? Now, that would be going too far to investigate the personal lives and concerns of the members of the board, but nonetheless you have to think about their roles and cover finance, cover the impact on the IT, cover the impact on the image of the company, etc., so that all the various members of the board will feel their concerns are being addressed. Have you considered all the ways that the proposal adds value? Often proposals will add value in different ways to the ones that you first thought of, and you can strengthen it if you add to your list of benefits. Can you connect to the business goals? Okay. So I talked about alignment. Of course, the scope is also to do with time scale. You're thinking about a 1-2 year sort of period for the implementation and return. Have you identified the business goals, and can you articulate how the proposal supports those business goals, or which of the business goals it actually supports? Is your analysis credible? These days, the board can be called to account. It's quite typical for some shareholders who are dissatisfied to sue the company because they made the wrong decision. Okay? So the board needs to be able to say, yeah, we made the right decision when we chose to adopt this particular proposal and not that one. So what are they going to rely on? They're going to rely on the information in the business case that they approve. All right? And that's why it's pretty standard to have to write a formal business case. People might be impressed with an elevator pitch, but before they fund, they want to see a written proposal, particularly in the cases of a publicly listed company where the board might be individually liable for failures of executive management or governance. So, he wants to be credible. They're busy people, so it doesn't want to be too long. I think 40 pages is quite long, maybe, for some board members. So compressing is not a bad thing. And is there a narrative that will make your proposal emotionally appealing, as well as appealing to the hard-nosed chief finance officer? And the book makes the point that a major business case will be put together by a team, and indeed putting together a business case is a little project in itself. So it needs its own timeline, tasks are allocated, progress is checked, etc. There are intermediate deliverables. Well, you're not in the fortunate position of having 7 people who can cover all of these roles. So by the time you're putting together your final report, there will be 2 of you. So you'll have to take on these different hats. The project manager, making sure everything does happen and the work is submitted on time. The politician, who can sense the political climate in the company and know which are the right goals to aim for. The salesperson who can have this, put together this narrative and make the story emotionally compelling. The detective who can root out the facts, maybe some facts which are difficult to track down, some information within the organisation that maybe they don't make particularly public. The investigative reporter who can write this up about the investigation in a compelling way. The analyst who can deal with the data, present the numbers and the graph in a clear, credible way. And the attorney, who's the person who argues in a court of law, who will actually make the most powerful case, argument in favour of approving the proposal. So a little bit more about each of those 7 C's. First of the correct fit, while actually ignoring the C idea, which is called a scope. So in the scope you should say what's driving this business case, what are the compelling reasons why this particular proposal should be funded from the point of view of the business, what are the boundaries. There's a danger that IT projects can grow and grow and grow, so be clear what you are not doing as well as what you are, the deliverables, the team, the schedule. And in a real scenario, you would need to have confidence that there was one member of the board at least who you can rely on to speak favourably after you've left the room or when they're having their meeting and you're not present. So your executive sponsor or sponsors are really vital to the success. And of course they're vital to the success after the proposal is approved, as well as getting the proposal approved. Criteria, who cares about what, so who's going to participate in the decision, what are the criteria, what are the things they're worried about, how the tangibles as well as intangibles, what are all the benefits, not just the financial ones. And try to anticipate how the decisions will be made by the board. So assign the weight to each of the criteria based on the priorities of the board. In some companies, the whole process might be completely transparent, and they say, in making decisions about funding projects, we use these criteria with these weights, and then that's a given. Or else, if you haven't been provided that, if you can't find that information, you would have to come up with the criteria and the weights yourself. Okay. Criteria is plural. The singular word is criterion. So in your report, when you talk about this criterion is important because, and I've assigned weight to all criteria, be aware that there are these distinctions. Sometimes you read even published books and articles that don't make that distinction, but I will notice if you don't. So aligning these criteria to the goals of the business, the salesperson can think how to do that best, doing the calculations, construct explanation. So a table of numbers in the appendix or a table of numbers in the main report doesn't really add much to your business case unless you explain what the numbers mean, where they come from, and how you've done the calculations, the formulas you use and the variables in those formulas, where have you come up with the number you plugged in for that variable? Is it something that you've had to estimate, or is it a value you've been able to obtain from a report on the business itself, or a case study of a similar initiative in a competitor or comparable organisation? So get the numbers, do the calculations. So how much confidence can you have in that? So you've got a table, you've got these numbers, you've come up with the answer. Are the sources credible? Can you trust the case study, the data that you've got? Why is it that they're credible? Is it the case that the answer really depends crucially on the numbers you plug in, or is there a reasonable margin of error? Okay, the published figure that we got from the case study is 10%, but still there's going to be a significant return, even if it's only 7 or 8%. So what's the sensitivity of the calculation? Well, in your first report, initial report, you're kind of taking the role of the board in that I've asked you to put forward 3 initial proposals and then prioritise and decide which to go ahead with, which one you would recommend most strongly and why. So part of the analysis phase is constructing that decision matrix, working out the alignment and the return themes and your recommendations. Notice that alignment and return are 2 obvious criteria which should be considered when prioritising your 3 proposals. Then constructing the stories, making the case a compelling one, constructing graphics and narratives that support the graphics and say, well, yeah, you really want to do this. In general, for any board of the company, unless it's in crisis, the safest thing to do is not to change the business. Any business change is a risky thing. So you always have to overcome, there's a risk involved, and there's an initial cost. So you have to have a case which is strong enough to justify why take the risk, why do the investment and spend the money, because there's a compelling argument that there will be a good return and other benefits to the organisation. So I've asked you to put together a presentation as well as a formal business case, because I think that in most situations the business case process includes both a presentation and a report. Now, an important component of your business case document is the executive summary. Some people make the mistake of not reading the instructions properly and putting abstracts at the top. It's a business document and it needs an executive summary, not an abstract. If it was an academic document, you would begin with an abstract. Well, in principle, they're not so different. The executive summary is a summary of the document, and that's just what an abstract is. So, what's the difference? Well, it's aimed at the executive. And you have to assume this is somebody who is quite busy dealing with lots of aspects of the business and organisation, and they will be quite brutal with how they use their time. So if you present a busy executive with a 20-page document or 40-page document, and after a page or two they think, wow, this person really doesn't know how to write, I can't see the point in what they're proposing, they will stop reading. Okay? So, because I'm marking your work, I will carry on reading, but if you haven't made it clear in the first couple of pages why this is an important proposal, your mark will not be as high. So you really have to use the executive summary to convince the executive this is something they want to do. At the very least, they want to read the report. They will give some time considering what you're saying, okay? Instead of just ruling it out because it's clear you don't know what you're talking about. I think I've got better things to do with my time. So, that report should say what it is you're recommending. I'm recommending that you put, £500,000 and a project team of 10 working on this proposal to rebuild the website so that it attracts 10% more online sales. That's pretty clear and concrete, whereas I'm recommending you invest in upgrading the website is not so clear and not so concrete. So having some specific numbers really helps. Why? Well, 10% increase in online sales kind of speaks for itself, but then you can go on to say which will then generate another £3 million of profit, and you've really made it clear what the return and benefit. Also, this improved website will enhance the reputation of the company, whereas at the moment we are seeing a lot of people just click away and etc. I've got a couple of questions already. What is that?
When you explained that using the presentation as a bump up the revenue by 10%,
Yeah.
what will be your evidence now?
The question is, what is the evidence that you can use to say 10% increase in online sales? Okay. Well, this is the executive summary. Clearly, that number has to be explained in the report. And so you have to have some model of what sales are generating. And that's kind of the next talk, sure. But it can't be a number that you just pull out of the air. At the very least, you need to say, because this is what our competitors are achieving. So you set a level by benchmarking the competition. But also, you should use some information you have about how the website currently performs. For example, a lot of people are just clicking away instead of going through, or maybe people are going through and then abandoning the purchase in scary numbers because there's something wrong with the checkout page. So you can drill down into those parts of the website and say by adjusting them and then falling in line with industry norms or whatever, then this is where we get this 3 to 10% sales. And now it starts to get credible because you're demonstrating your understanding of how a website actually works to generate sales. Question 2?
Yeah. Actually, I'll take my question back. I think
Okay.
it's gonna. I'll ask it
later.
later.
Good. Yeah. Here we go. Right. I summarise the whole business case. Okay. It is a business document, and it should therefore have the feeling of a business document. The business graphics and tools and diagrams, figures, tables should help, not least because complex ideas are often best presented visually. Bearing in mind, in your audience, you will have at least one person who really likes numbers. The Chief Financial Officer will be a numbers person. So there should be tables of numbers. But other people, like the marketing officer, may well be a visual person. So you need a balance of numbers and graphics. Complex, so the business graphics, the fact that you're using the right kind of business graphics itself adds credibility. So graphs of accounts, project finances, things like value ladder, I'll show an example later, a risk matrix or risk analysis table, you've seen those, a decision matrix, you've seen those as well. I know some sources will recommend calculating things like NPV and IRR, but I'm not assuming that you're accountants. This isn't accounting, so I'm not asking for those things, but it's only return and payback that I'm asking you to estimate and talk about, or calculate, estimate, talk about. So, part of what you need to do in making a good report, in making a good PowerPoint presentation, is to have some good visuals. So I've found a few graphics on the web and said, okay, well, is this any good? Is that better? So one's about financial returns, one's about value ladders, one's decision matrices. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show 2 of them and ask you to decide which you prefer, talk to your neighbour, find out which they prefer, and see if you agree on the reasons why this is better than that one. So here's a way of displaying return on investment. Cost, benefit, return. Here's another way. These are the costs per something, which network is about telephony installation. With the new scheme, these are the new costs, they're less, so this is the monthly saving. So, do you prefer the first one, or do you prefer the second one? Make up your mind, discuss with your neighbour which you like and why.
干嘛呀这是？没事儿，就是让你选第一个。他说俩图比较一下，选哪个？就选第一个，第二个跟傻逼一样。 你看那轱辘怎么长？对吧？第一个比较清晰一点啊。这个它都是很色彩。
Consideration of the reason why. Has anyone changed their mind discussing with their neighbour? Everyone discussed their Okay, so quick vote. Who prefers the first draft? Who prefers the second? Okay, so that was a clear preference for number one. Would someone who liked number one say what's good about it? It's simple, yeah.
Can you?
It's easy to understand what's going on. Okay, here's a question. Why is the expected benefit in red below the line? Why would not?
The reason they're in red is not very good because it's in red from the reason but the reason they're upside down is so that we can see a nice line going upwards.
Yeah, we've got the line going upwards, but isn't this line here what you get by taking this, subtracting that, and then plotting, and then accumulating that? So I think it's kind of odd.
It will make more sense with that's why they're around, because red is more of a negative color.
And red is a negative colour. And if you're a finance officer, red means deficit. No question, you know. Black means positive, red means negative. End of. So there's some clause in this. This comes from, ironically, a business case submitted to the Business System Board of the University of Southampton. I think. Anyway, okay. So this kind of fancy thing, people thought it was too complicated, but there was two people in the front who liked it. What's good about it?
It's more detailed, you know what
Yeah. So there's a kind of real attempt to show you and convince you there are savings here, you know, $525 per month. We didn't just come up with that figure out of the blue because we've broken it down into these costs, and presumably in the report there's some explanation about how those numbers are arrived at. So that's an example of using a graphic to add credibility to the report. But it is just a monthly snapshot, whereas this first one is looking at the life cycle of the project, and a crucial point we can see is when the project pays back, and here's when it's bringing its overall returns over that 5-year period. So it's not unusual to see a project which is taking 2.5 years or whatever, I can't quite figure out the axis, it's taking years before returning, beginning to make a positive return. Yeah.
I think it really doesn't make any sense to compare these two.
Ah, okay.
Their goal is different, the time scope is also different.
Yes.
If you look at the long-term investment, first graph would be better. If you're trying to lower your cost and lower your cost, the second one is better.
Yeah. So they're graphics for different purposes, different snapshots in time, so it doesn't make sense to compare them. Thank you. Okay. So the next one it's about this thing some people call a value ladder, and it's a way of showing how particular aspect might lead to enhancement in the goal. So this one is kind of about improving sports loading, lightweight materials, waterproof, etc., and that might contribute to properties like being wearable, and then an emotional response. I can feel comfortable, I can use it every day, and that helps with your joyfulness, freedom, or health. So the lines show the relationship, the causal relationship. Here's another value ladder, mapping something against the balanced scorecard that people process estimated from a financial perspective. So some initiative here is helping to educate managers and train staff, implement various aspects, do these things through our interactions with customers, improving engagement with these numbers, and therefore eventually achieve the goal of an increase in profit or some measure of profit called EBIT of 90 measure of earnings, so $90 million. Okay. So there's this value ladder, and there's this value ladder. Which do you prefer? Number one or number two? Discuss with your neighbour and see what you think. Number one.
They represent the same thing because you don't
one that's better than the other in my
That's the second one. That's the first one.
That's the
second one is just some arbitrary lines.
Number one and number two. Did anyone change their mind? Number one, who prefers number one? And who prefers number two? Okay. So, that was a little bit more balanced. So, somebody who liked number one, what was good about it?
They're both bad, but it's easier to read.
Okay, they're both bad, but it's easier to read. Easy to read is a good thing for a business diagram, I agree with that. And who likes number two? Yes. Someone else? You've already given the comment. Somebody likes number two? What was good about it? Yeah.
The positioning of the boxes and arrows might be more structured than the first one.
Yes, okay. So the first one, the arrows are a little bit, they aren't even arrows, they're just lines, aren't they? And they are a bit chaotic. And again, bear in mind that, as with the previous two, these are very different purposes. This is about saying what's good about a particular garment this company is thinking about introducing. just making a decision on a particular product and justifying how technical aspects of that product feed into these very emotional qualities.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Should we look at this right bottom up or
Oh, I assumed that the arrows were going this way. Of course, it's not clear when the lines don't have any arrowheads on them. Yeah, you could say, okay, but if I want to design a sport clothing that gives health, freedom, and joyfulness, then what I've got to do is make sure it's safe, and then I've got to do is make sure it's not connected to the skin, etc. That would be one possible reading of the diagram. I believe it was used the other way up. This one, of course, has got more of a feeling of a business graphic because it's about a portfolio of projects, various things that are going on, and supporting all these projects at the same time, we believe will have these impacts on customer, and that will have those impacts on the business's financial situation, which will achieve our increase in earnings. Okay. But you are preferring the kind of graphic that has got sort of boxes and arrows. Just a little comment. You're doing that because you've got a kind of computer science perspective on life, and it's not quite the same thing as the business perspective. For example, I suspect that someone from a marketing perspective might like this because of the wavy lines a little bit better, whereas you've kind of gone for the boxes and straight lines. So that's interesting. Okay. Final example, two decision matrices, again a little bit blurry, sorry for my cut and paste. So, what are problems in our cafe? What's going wrong? What might be the one that we should be dealing with? Who is causing the customers more pain? It's easy to solve, or quick to solve, etc. So, what to do first? Another example, comparing different wells we might put in to get water out of the ground. I guess it's drinking water. We're here, so we do have to think about water quality. But we're just getting water quality out for that to the pot. So, do you prefer number one of these decision matrices or number two? Have a quick think and discuss with your neighbour.
这是干嘛？等你选两个，你选哪个？选这个，肯定这个，多清楚啊！玩儿肯定。
All right. Who prefers number one? All right. And who prefers number two? Oh, okay. That's almost 50-50. Interesting. So, I think that shows actually there's merit to both of these, and probably you could construct a decision matrix, a table that incorporates the good features of both of them. some of the layout here is quite nice. It's a bit strange showing the calculation, but this is from a tutorial, so they're showing the calculation. You wouldn't usually do that. So this is more sensible. It just gives the answers at the bottom here. But the total is kind of squashed into a rather small column. Whereas here, the totals are given a cell and a bit of space, so it's very clear what the ranking is. So, and who liked the colours in this one? And who liked the more subtle colours in that one? Yes, it's a little bit personal how much colour you should actually use. Okay. Right, I think we've done enough already on that one. So we'll take our 10-minute break, and by that start 2 minutes after.
I think